welcome. You are watching QTV and you are watching The Week in Review. I'm Adi Darami. I'll apologize now for a slightly croaky voice. And you are watching The Week in Review with me and colleague Momo Mboj. Mr. Mboj, welcome to the program.
I'm glad to be here, Adi.
Glad that you're here. So as I said, I have a bit of a sore throat, so I hope it will allow me to go through the rest of the program. Now, it's called The Week in Review because we review 10 stories from the week just gone by. I used to say big stories, and then somebody said to me, you missed out a couple of stories that I liked, and I thought they were big stories. So I'll just say 10 stories, interesting stories, let's put it that way, from the week just gone by, and we kick them around for the next hour or so. So what are those stories, I hear you ask? Well, His Excellency the President has just commissioned the first ever locally trained cohort of officer cadets. Yes, our very own Sandhurst or West Point, if you will. And the UDP has marked the 10th anniversary of Solo Sanding's passing, and they called it Solo Sanding Memorial Day. That was just a few days ago. And then CEPRAS, they've just done Center for Policy Research and Strategic Studies, CEPRAS. They've done a series of polls, and they've kicked up quite a few interesting results of those surveys, and we'll go into them somewhat with particular reference this time on the issues of crime and police trust. There are other things that they dealt with as well that came up in the survey. We might go into those as well. And in Congo, not DR Congo, the one that's always making the news, the other Congo that you hear very little about, Denis Sassou Nguesso has just been sworn in for a 5th time as president. Yes, 5th time, no term limits there, although I think the new constitution does bring that in. And then the 17th African Union of Broadcasting General Assembly was held, guess where? Here in the Gambia, and very interesting it was too. And we've got two items from that. One is about the General Assembly itself, the other is about the discussions that they had there around artificial intelligence in the media. Also, President Ruto of Kenya, he went viral this week when he hosted a summit, kind of security summit, and he said the African Union is not fit for purpose. Is he right? Who knows? Also, another figure who's made the news over the last few years, an incident in 2018, the trial was interrupted by COVID and other matters, finally was sort of resolved. Julius Malema, he was sentenced to 5 years imprisonment. Also, Civil Service University has had its first orientation ceremony here in the Gambia. And FLOG, haven't heard of FLOG? That's the Federation of Labour Unions of the Gambia. They just come together, and it's an umbrella body, they hope, for labour unions here in the Gambia. So those are the stories. The other one I told you about is about artificial intelligence for journalists. So off and running, as usual, the one I mentioned first is the first one we'll delve into, and that was when President Barrow commissioned the first ever bunch of locally trained officer cadets. Here's some of what happened.
It featured a parade by the newly trained officers of this commissioning course 01 after an intensive 6 months training program. The event continued at the State House, where the commissioned officers, accompanied by the Army High Command and family members, underwent the symbolic peeping ceremony and oath-taking, officially receiving their lieutenant and second lieutenant ranks respectively. The Chief of Defence Staff of the Gambia Armed Forces, Lieutenant General Mohamed O.A. Cham, described the moment as historic and a significant shift from years of reliance on foreign training institutions.
What we are witnessing this morning is therefore not simply the end of a course, but the result of years of deliberate effort, careful planning, and a firm belief in our own capacity. At the same time, it marks the beginning of a new chapter, one which we expect will grow into a fully fledged military academy and a center of excellence for the Gambia Armed Forces and other security services in the near future.
As essential qualities for national service,
I charge you to uphold the highest standards of good citizenship, professionalism, discipline, and integrity. Live up to the values instilled in you and lead with compassion. Your soldiers and rating will watch you closely for admiration, emulation, or otherwise. So march your words with actions and conviction. The service to the nation is justly rewarding and worthwhile. I assure you all that the government takes pride in our security personnel, and we will continue to support capacity building, infrastructural development, and the welfare of our citizens in uniform.
Mr. Mboj, several things there that one can delve into. Just there, we heard the President kind of framing it in the kind of terms and conditions of Service Act, which was about improving the lot of military personnel. Also, they talked about a future national military academy, and I mentioned kind of half-jokingly our own Sandhurst or West Point. So part of the whole security reform process, I guess.
Oh, absolutely. And this is a statement, isn't it? That's how one can frame it. It's a statement that we're taking back ownership. We're providing our own training.
Yeah.
And yes, for a very long time, it was before the Brits. But I remember that British Army Training Corps. And then afterwards, I'm Turkish.
Sure.
We've
Yeah,
even
that's
had
right.
Nigerians, I think.
That's
So
right.
we've had all of that. So now, this is it. We are moving on. Imagine the sort of cost saving,
Well, indeed.
that
indeed.
sort of thing, and
Yes.
then you control the narrative and your values and the like. And I'm told that with this sort of thing, it will scale, the scaling of personnel.
That's right.
So absolutely, of course, we will tout the historic first.
Well, indeed.
Absolutely.
Yes.
But then we start to go into the details. Fine, 29, yes. You can begin anywhere, really,
Sure.
for 6 weeks. Then I thought, maybe this is the certificate level, there'll be a diploma level, and then they'll be going up. Because you imagine that with
Well.
this sort of work, 6 weeks is quite short. So issues of capacity,
Sure.
standards,
That's right.
oversight.
Because I did ask the journalists who covered it, I said, did anybody ask about, the people who are training these folks? What's their experience? Have they done similar at other academies? Have they been trained specifically for this role? And those are some of the questions that came to mind, certainly to me, when I heard. And the big thing that stood out, I think, for myself, and I think almost, is the 6 weeks. 6 weeks could only be a kind of polishing off. It can't be an in-depth, because if you go to Sandhurst, it's for much longer periods. If you go to West Point, it's for much longer periods than 6 weeks. Yes.
It can go to 3 years.
Well,
I've read. You see, that sort of thing. Yes. So maybe we just need to get the details.
Indeed.
Maybe there are only certain levels, low levels, as it were, of
Yes,
this kind
quite.
of training
Yes.
that we can do for ourselves. I suspect that we'll still rely on
Yeah.
external expertise and the like. For instance, even with the instructors.
Yes. Yes.
Are they all Gambians?
Well, which is-
Are we relying
those
on
were some of my
experts
questions,
coming
absolutely.
in? So this is it. There are a good number of questions really we need to ask. And the training as well, the nature of the training. Of course, you want them to be tactically brilliant in the field.
Indeed.
But what about the ethics
Yes, go ahead.
of not getting involved politically, political
yes.
interference? This
Yes.
has been a massive problem, hasn't it, really?
And that's one of the reasons why I kind of included a bit there from the president, where he's kind of hinting at that he didn't say it in so many words, but he said live up to the oath and the call to professionalism that he mentioned, and he urged them to uphold the highest standards of, to quote him, discipline, integrity and patriotism. But of course, some of the people who make coup d'etats say they're doing it out of patriotism. So
Absolutely.
there's that.
That's
Yes.
the issue, the question of the training, one thing, and the operational reality.
Indeed. Yeah.
Out there.
Yeah.
So it depends on so much, and whether even they behave, they discipline themselves, to some extent will also depend on what civil authority is doing. Because normally, just as you just said, they use them, that's the excuse
As
normally.
for stepping in.
For stepping in.
Yeah.
So all of these things are interlinked,
Yeah.
they're all linked.
Yeah.
So yes, the welfare of these soldiers, the training here and all of that, good. But we cannot sacrifice standards.
Yeah, sure.
My keenness, as it were, to take ownership, to show that actually now we are doing it, for ourselves,
Sure.
shouldn't mean that I compromise on standards and all the rest of it. Because otherwise, really, what's the point? You're not going to deliver
Right.
as you'd be required to
Well,
when the time comes to deliver.
That is it, exactly. Thank you for that. And it reminds me just quickly of the University of the Gambia. When it first started, yes, people were proud that we had our own university. But if we're honest, the standard of, the ones who are graduating from there left a lot to be desired. And we hope that's not the case with this.
Oh, absolutely. Remember, we talked about the fact that, with Sierra Leone, for instance, Waterbury College, it was very closely tied, affiliated to Durham for a very long time.
Right.
So when you begin, the first stuttering steps, you need an experienced hand. This is, a young person, let's say, with the brother or sister guiding you across the road as well. So you need stuff like that to gain experience. So we just shouldn't, because we have this desire, as it were, to show that we are doing it for ourselves, we're doing this, we're doing that. What you do, the quality matters. Otherwise, really, you're not going to see the results you want, really. It's just an empty, vain rhetoric.
Yeah, quite. As you said, quality matters.
Quality matters.
And that second one kind of hints at this kind of professionalism of people in the security sector. What am I talking about? Solo Sanding. The UDP, United Democratic Party, marked the 10th anniversary of his passing with various events, including a parade in the streets, which I thought they were banned. But anyway, here's some of what went down.
Youth leader within the UDP who played a key role in its grassroots mobilization and internal organization. Born on 1st January 1959, Sandeng rose through the ranks of the UDP, serving in various leadership positions including Youth Secretary General and later National Organizing Secretary. On 14th April 2016, he led a protest calling for electoral reforms and greater political freedom. He was arrested during the demonstration and later died while in custody. His death has sparked outrage as supporters and several human rights groups have consistently maintained that he died as a result of torture. His death triggered nationwide protests and is widely regarded as a turning point in the country's political history, contributing to the events that ended more than 2 decades of rule under former President Yahya Jammeh. Attention also turned to ongoing discussions around justice and accountability for alleged abuses under the Jammeh regime. At a recent press briefing, Attorney General and Minister of Justice Dauda A. Jallow outlined progress being made towards prosecuting individuals linked to past human rights violations.
From the policy point of view, the answer is Jammeh has been recommended to be prosecuted and government have accepted and government is committed to ensuring that is implemented. How and where he will be prosecuted, I would again defer that to the prosecutor, because the hybrid court that we have set up through a treaty agreement with ECOWAS is capable of either sitting in Banjul or changing its location to an appropriate place, still to do its job.
Occasion to an appropriate place and still doing the job consideration, but if we concentrate particularly. So first story, we talked about office cadets, and we said that the president and others in the government had kind of framed it as a kind of part of security sector reform. And then of course, Solo Sandeng supposedly killed at the hands of security sector personnel. And so you had Mahdi Jobate give a lecture on this commemoration, on the democratic journey since those protests, and very much a time for reflection, Mr. Mboch.
Absolutely.
10 years, yeah.
Big time. Not that long ago, really, in many ways. It might seem like a long time, because for us, we witnessed it all. We witnessed the whole stuff.
Yeah,
the Solo Sandeng protest march at Westfield, and then a day or two later, then we saw Ousainou Darboe and others on Kairaba Avenue.
Yeah.
You know, his Solo Sandeng, dead or alive, demanding that.
Yeah, that's right.
And we all know that that was really a turning point.
Very much.
Towards the elections in 2016.
Quite.
That was absolutely the crucial turning point. Absolutely. Everybody really can recognize that, I feel. But here, this is interesting. It seems as if UDP has taken ownership of it. We accept. UDP member, he was a UDP member, and it was because of the UDP they came out and all of that. But I thought afterwards, the Gambia had really taken over, if you know what I mean, because of the state funeral, there was a state event that we had for him. So absolutely, perhaps one would have thought that this sort of thing would be more national.
Yes, indeed.
Because really it acquired
kind
to
of
my
national
to my
significance,
mind,
yeah.
yes, that significance, as
Yeah.
it were, and it led to a turning point. But yes, and occasions like this, we'll start thinking about how far have we gone
That's
in
right, yeah.
implementing
Mm-hmm.
all the recommendations of the TRRC, and even within the context of Sandeng. So have we implemented the recommendations
well,
around this? So that was always going to be a long journey. We've just appointed the chief special prosecutor, in these cases, and even in Solo Sandeng's case, Yankuba Baji is in prison right now, and there are others, and they were directly implicated in that. And even Usman Sonko in Switzerland, one of the you know, one of the crimes, one of the charges, wasn't it?
Relates to Solo
Sandeng. So yes, when you look at that, there is movement. You cannot possibly deny that.
Sure.
But some of us would be impatient.
Yeah, quite.
You know, we want accountability.
Indeed.
And the process is still ongoing.
It's still ongoing.
But Solo Sandeng, the whole country should mark him.
Yeah, quite.
Really. It was very, very brave.
Yeah.
Everybody knew the risks that we faced in 2016.
Sure.
We all knew, you know, before that the record had been established before then.
Quite.
So for him to go out, that was just so brave. Some might even say almost suicidal, given the bloodthirsty person who occupied our state house.
Sure. And it was good to see some survivors of that protest. Fatou Camara, Modungo were there, to kind of lend their voice as well. But as you rightly said, it was a tipping point, a turning point that led to where we are now. Really.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You must mark the symbolism, you must mark the event.
Sure.
But we must go beyond that.
Yeah, quite.
You know, wasn't it?
Quite.
So what was learned? So what actions
Yes, quite.
should that
Is there a
lesson
legacy?
lead us?
Yeah, quite.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
what do we do? We keep talking about never again. That in itself is just a crazy ambition. You can never determine that.
Quite.
Perhaps what we can say is not during our time,
Quite.
not
Quite.
in my
Not
time.
in my time, not in my
Cannot
name.
guarantee what's going to happen tomorrow.
Quite.
Cannot guarantee what's going to happen next year. But at least what can we do? Not in our time.
Sure. I think that's a good one. I hope they're watching and I hope they pick that one up. Thank you, Mr. Amboj. Story number 3, CEPRAS, the Center for Policy Research and Strategic Studies. Every now and then they hold surveys and they issue those surveys, and usually there's a lot of talk around them, including a recent one which had loads and loads of aspects that they dealt with, all sorts of things. But we thought we'll pick out at least one or two and public concern over crime and police trust. Have a look and have a listen.
Public perception of the economy remains largely negative. Only 18% of respondents describe the economy as good, while a significant majority, 76%, say it is either fairly bad or very bad. The survey also points to concerns over how the economy is being managed, with around 68% of respondents expressing dissatisfaction with economic governance. But for many Gambians, the issue is more immediate. The rising cost of living continues to hike, with 3 out of 4 respondents saying the government is handling prices poorly. Asked about the country's biggest economic challenge, 44% pointed to rising prices, well ahead of agriculture at 21% and unemployment at 14%. While perceptions of personal living conditions are slightly less severe, they still lean negatively. Nearly half of respondents describe their situation as difficult, although just over a third say their lives have improved.
To that insert, you realize, as I mentioned, that it dealt with a lot of things. We can't really deal with all of them. And one of the things that it did deal with and reported on was public dissatisfaction with crime management. But I guess we can't ignore the others, so we can go into them. And what interested me, Mr. Amboj, is that our police force have been very, very active in terms of reaching out to the media, communicating with the public, and saying how much better they are doing. And yet the perception persists, according to what one gets from the poll. It says specifically 55% of respondents described response of crime management as poor, 30% said it was being done very badly, and 25% said fairly badly, while only 36% viewed it with favorability.
Absolutely. It would have been interesting to see an objective survey on whether crime is actually going up or going down or wherever. We do not know that.
Yeah.
So these are perceptions.
Perceptions.
See, that's a
And
very
I always
tricky.
tell,
Yes, we should be careful with this notion of
abs-
perceptions.
absolutely.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, go on.
But we live in that sort of news ecology, don't we? A few bad people going out there doing bad things, they amplify it so much, you begin to get the sense that, oh, crime is going up, or that is going down, or a lot.
Yeah.
So this is the key. With crime, people think that we're not doing well. Trust in the police.
Yeah,
21% said, yeah, we trusted the police. And what, 52% said no.
Yeah,
that sort of thing.
That's right.
But it's curious, isn't it, that it depends on the regions, the variability,
That's right,
the regional variability.
Yes, exactly.
The urban, peri-urban tend to be more skeptical.
Yep,
So you go to the rural areas, they tend to have more trust in authority.
And the divergence is quite significant between those two, the urban and the rural. The disparity, yes.
So that's one level. The other level is apparently with education. The higher the education, the more skeptical you are. And the lower the education, the more trusting.
That's right.
So I asked the question, as a general rule, is it that the less educated people are more trusting of authority? I do not know. But it's good to have these snapshots, as it were, to see what people are thinking, what's going on, and the relevant authorities. Do we need more awareness campaigns? This is what I mean.
Indeed.
Do you have like an objective assessment of actually what's going on regarding crime and that sort of thing? That's the way that you can engage with people and gain their trust. You need to gain people's trust. If you're going to do your job, on our behalf, for us, then we need to have that relationship so that you can have all the tip-offs. You know, when you have trust in the police. So this is the key. Maybe we need to really study this, not simply dismiss it.
This is a dismiss.
How many times have we government officials just come and dismiss it?
There's only 1,245 people.
That's it. But if you do not understand statistics, you really cannot interpret that. Go and do your homework before you start talking.
Exactly.
That's really what it is.
Thank you for that. So I hope whenever anybody's looking at this, they see it through the proper lens. Thank you for that, Mr. Mboj. I know we spent a lot on the three stories so far, but story number 4, Denis Sassou Nguesso has been sworn in yet again as president of the Republic of Congo. Not the democratic one, the undemocratic one, I guess you could call it. Have a look, have a listen.
The inauguration ceremony, which gives the 82-year-old leader another 5-year mandate, was attended by several heads of state, including Adama Barrow, President of the Gambia, John Dramani Mahama, President of Ghana, Paul Kagame, President of Rwanda, President Lorenzo of Angola, Felix Tshisekedi, President of neighboring DRC Congo, and many others. While Kyochimba Mokemen, if he completes his term, by which time he would be 87 years old, he would have served 51 years in office, thus making him one of the longest-serving leaders in the world.
The longest serving leaders in the world. Mr. Mboj, as with some stories, you and I discussed this when we were kind of after the story had been done, and we talked about the fact that 10 heads of state, 10 presidents attended. We've mentioned some of them there. Others sent either vice presidents or they sent ministers. And we asked, I think you asked me the question, what does this indicate? What does this tell us? And I don't know. I mean, I said that I thought that it was a kind of approval for stability. Because if you compare with its neighbor, which you just crossed the Congo River, by the way, if you stand in Brazzaville, you can see Kinshasa, very, very much kind of unstable and has been destabilized since it gained its independence. Maybe they're just thanking him that he's managed to keep a lid on things.
Pragmatism over principle.
Well, yes, and I'm glad you said that, because principle, this was a poll that was boycotted by the major opposition parties because they said it was not going to be free and fair. And he got 94.8%. Of course, he would have 65% turnout. And if your major opposition boycotts it, then how legitimate is your election?
The long rule.
Yeah.
See,
Yeah,
if you had, for instance, somebody like a Mandela
Yeah,
before
Yeah,
he
go ahead.
stood for this term,
Yeah, go ahead.
would have said, "Oh man, my friend, isn't it time to leave
Leave
to
the
give the
stage."
younger ones
Yeah, go ahead.
to take over?" This is almost like the normalization of long rule.
No, this is
Oh,
it.
this is dangerous to my mind. Anyway,
Yeah.
so we had a kind of incumbency solidarity.
Yeah. Quite.
That's really what it
and
is.
that's what
So
it
one
is.
understands the sort of security element.
Sure.
What happened to ECOWAS recently.
well, that's right.
You see the danger of splitting up groups. One understands all of that. But again, the Kagames or our president and others, you need to lean on them to move away from this kind of behavior.
Sure.
We need good governance.
Yeah.
The whole continent, look at geopolitically what's going on. If we do not get it right, you will suffer for it.
That's it.
You can rig politics and elections. You cannot rig economics.
Exactly.
You cannot rig so much.
Yeah,
We've
correct.
suffered. Look at after COVID,
Yeah,
and then
correct.
now with the wars.
Yeah.
Anything that happens outside, we suffer so much.
Yeah, sure.
Because we really do not have the
Yeah,
strength.
correct,
We are not
correct.
fortified within. So when we go around playing these diplomatic games, essentially,
Yeah,
when
correct.
you are not really walking the talk,
Sure.
you will be exposed.
Yeah.
We've been exposed so many times because the rhetoric,
Yeah,
when they go to these things, what they say, and the reality is just so different.
Yeah, sure. And this
Who
is what,
suffers?
well, this is it, and this is what
The poor.
Traore, when he said we don't need democracy, he said, look at the countries that pretend to be democratic.
Yes, and even with that, I'm like, look, economic development is different from democracy.
quite-
We want
quite.
democracy for other reasons.
exactly, quite.
Democracy on its own wouldn't
It's
give
not
you
gonna get-
economic
yeah, quite.
development.
And
Economists have been telling us this for a very long time.
Yeah.
The effect of democracy on economic development is neutral,
Sure.
zero.
Yeah, quite. Yes. So the Constitution says because he's served 4 terms in the previous Constitution, he can only serve 1 more, which will end in 2031. So we hope he abides by
what?
that and doesn't. He'll be 8.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you for that, Mr. Ambush. And story number 5, we here in the Gambia have we've been blessed to be hosting the African Union of Broadcasting's 17th General Assembly, and very interesting it was too. 4-day event, and they got into some deep stuff, some of which we'll delve into. But here's some of what went down.
This assembly marks a double milestone celebrating both the annual gathering of the continent's most influential media minds as well as some from outside the continent, and the 20th anniversary of the African Union of Broadcasting. Over the past 2 decades, the AUB has evolved into the continent's largest media body, representing 85 members across the public and private sectors and advancing every segment of the radio and television industry to ensure that authentic African stories reach a global audience. However,
we remain fully committed to safeguarding press freedom, strengthening legal protections for journalists, and fostering a media environment anchored in professionalism, ethics, and public trust. I encourage you to further strengthen cooperation among African broadcasters, embrace innovation, and reaffirm the values of media fraternity. This will entrench the media as a more powerful driver of social transformation, economic development, and cultural continuity.
Mr. Mboj, I mentioned at the end of it, there were various resolutions. One of the top ones was about combating exorbitant fees. They were saying that, look, in terms of the media landscape, African broadcasters are quite poor, and yet they're being asked to pay fees that you would expect, the so-called sort of developed, for want of a better word, countries, first world countries have. And also the kind of what they termed as, they wanted to eliminate market segmentation, where they pick off, you are Senegal and they offer you this lovely deal and said, but we're only giving it to you. And they talked about wanting to have a unified voice when it came to negotiating. That's quite a tough ask, isn't it?
Absolutely. And when I read that, this was what? they've been around for what, 20 years
Yeah,
or
yeah,
so.
yeah, 20th
Then
anniversary.
I'm thinking, what tangible impact have they had on the media landscape?
Well, this is it.
How many people before this, how many people had heard about this union of broadcast?
Trust me, even in our team, which is made up of, I mean, I've been engaged with them because, you know, my sister has worked with them over the last 5-6 years, so I kind of knew about them. But even in our team, if they're honest, many of them had never heard of it, which speaks volumes. You know?
That's exactly it.
Yeah.
So this is really what the issue is. When you go to these events, we make these loud pronouncements, as it were, declarations,
Yeah,
as it
quite.
were. But then on the ground, to change these declarations into outcomes.
Yeah, quite.
It always doesn't work.
And I think you said the right word, loud, because in this particular resolution, it didn't say we would like. It said we are demanding consolidated rights packages for Africa. I mean, you know, one has to say that the people who probably benefited most were CCTV, China folks. They were there and they signed not only with individual countries, including the Gambia, and individual companies, including QTV, they signed a rights package with the African Union. So, you know, they really were kind of, and they sent their bigwigs here, you know, and so they really, you know, the others who were kind of, but people came from everywhere. Al Jazeera were there, BBC were here as well, some bigwigs, you know.
Oh, absolutely. It was a massive stuff.
Yeah, it really was.
When you guys
It really was.
You know,
Yeah, maybe we should have made more noise about it here on QTV and other, and also in the newspapers. But you know, it was huge. But as you rightly say, they've been around for 20 years. What can they point to as being things that they've achieved that they're now making these demands? You know, they ask for things like the rights to get clips and packages, use archives that much. That's sensible things, you know, because I remember I wanted to get some archive material when we were doing something on Sadauda, and I contacted somebody because it was an unusual story. Houphouët Boigny had organized a golf tournament in Côte d'Ivoire, and it invited various heads of state, including, of course, our then president, who always said he loved golf. And I asked the folks, I won't name them, and they said it was like $300 per second for the footage. I said, thank you, I'll pass on that one. So things like that, lots of archive material relating to Africa that we don't have control of, these bigwigs outside have. We like it at a much reduced rate. So like I said, sensible things, but what's the likelihood? Because in fact, when I wrote to these people, I said, look, you've had this since 1975. I said, has anybody ever rented it from you? And they said, no. I said, so why are you asking such an exorbitant price that you're never going to get? So these are some of the things that they kind of dealt with, really.
Absolutely, Adam. But if it is my right to A, B, C, and D, whose responsibility is it to give it to me, to fulfill that right? If that person fails, do I have any recourse to redress? Where can I go? So all these structures are not there. We keep using rights all the time. When strictly speaking, they are not rights. I still
because it's not our property.
Absolutely. So to me, I still stick to Bentham's notion of what a right is. If I cannot enforce it in the courts, it's not a right.
It's not a right. Absolutely. So
to me, that's the most thing I can do.
I think that nails.
Absolutely, this is it. And even with the theme, what heritage, innovation, transformation. We're talking about telling our own stories and that sort of thing. I have no problem with it. But how would telling our own stories, how would it sit with quality independent journalism?
Sure. They have to come. They have to be
absolutely.
Come together.
I am not a politician. And what does our own story mean? We assume that we have one story.
No, of course we don't.
Yes, the myth of a single story. There
quite.
are so many stories.
Sure.
So which ones do I represent? So it's far more complex than we think.
Yes, I remember this came up at an event I was at in London, and I said in Africa we could probably, if we wanted to really narrow it down, you couldn't narrow it down to one. You could probably narrow it down to 4. Those who were governed by the French, those who were governed by the British, those who were governed by the Portuguese, and those who were governed by the Spanish. You might narrow it down to that, but even within those, it's so diverse.
And even our strategy of decolonization,
we're different.
You are going to have so many different voices. Whose narrative I tend to split this whole market into the traditionalists and the modernists, the modernizers, as it were. Whose version would I take? Sometimes I hear the most conservative views, as it were, of my culture. I'm like, no way.
Go ahead.
Always a backward-looking culture. I refuse to belong to that.
Right.
So you have different ideological sort of camps.
Sure.
You know what I mean? So which one?
Yeah, which one? That is the question. And that beautiful question takes us to the break. And after the break, we will have 5 more stories. Join us after this break. Do not go away.
In today's world, speed matters, but slow internet can hold you back. Now, the future of connectivity has arrived in the Gambia. QCell's QFiber, ultra-fast, ultra-reliable internet designed for the way you live. Stream your favorite shows without buffering. Power your business with seamless video calls. Study, work, and play online like never before. From homes to businesses, QCell Fiber is connecting the Gambia to the future. QCell's QFiber. Get connected today. Call 145 or 300-3779. QCell. We innovate, others follow.
Hello and welcome back after that break. You are watching QTV and you are watching The Week in Review with me, Ade Darami, and my co-host, Mamadou Boj. And if you're just joining now, you have missed 5 really good stories. But as usual, if you're a usual watcher of this program, you know there are 5 equally good stories still to come, including this one. President Ruto of Kenya, he caused a bit of a stir recently with his pronouncements about the African Union. I won't spoil it for you. Have a look, have a listen.
I can tell you without an iota of doubt that African Union as is today is not fit for purpose, is not fit to provide the leadership that this continent needs going into the future. And therefore, there is need for the reform of the Africa Union.
That comment set the tune for the 2026 Mashariki Cooperation Conference, themed Emerging Geopolitical Dynamics and Africa's Security Architecture, which brought together top political leaders, intelligence chiefs, and global security experts. It saw representatives from 15 to 20 East African nations. Speakers emphasized the urgent need to adopt artificial intelligence in intelligence gathering and counter-terrorism, describing it as a critical tool for detecting and preventing attacks. Climate change was also highlighted as a growing driver of conflict, with experts pointing to resource scarcity and displacement as emerging triggers of instability. The summit further raised alarm over misinformation and illicit financial flows, which leaders say are accelerating violence across the continent. Speakers stressed that conflict is not inevitable, but are the results of human decisions and can be resolved through dialogue and cooperation.
We must begin to believe in ourselves. We must believe in this continent. In this continent, there is enough for us to prosper. There is enough for us to grow wealth, create jobs, create opportunities, and develop our continent.
Having said that he didn't think the African Union was fit for purpose, of course he didn't let it lie there, and he said, I could say this and it could be just talk. He said, but I want to propose certain concrete things that we can do, that we can take from this conference, so it hasn't just become another talking shop. And I'll just mention a couple. He talked about something you touched on, just about modernizers. He said there needs to be a modern thinking and modern leadership across Africa if we are to achieve some of the things that we wanted. He talked about building a kind of what he called intelligence for peace. He said over in this forum we have about 35 intelligence chiefs. He said, why don't we come together and define a new framework for peace strategies for the African Union. And then he proposed what he called AU 2.0. This new, and he said this reform agenda will include strengthening executive authority, achieving financial independence, and establishing a unified African foreign policy, and securing a permanent seat on the UN Security Council for Africa.
Unified African foreign policy. How many generations, I suspect, would it take to do that?
We're all facing different threats and dealing with different things.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Adi, how many times have we said that? Maybe, he's got a few points, maybe the African Union represents an era of diplomacy that is now obsolete,
for real,
given what we face right now.
Yeah.
Take the sovereignty problem.
Yeah, go on.
All states want to hold on to their sovereignty. They hold on to it fiercely. They will not compromise on it.
Sure.
A transcontinental body as that cannot function well without that. So it's going to be slow, the lowest common denominator kind of pace. So what can you do? The structure itself doesn't lend itself to radical views or radical policies. It will take radical policies to really change where we are, isn't it? To really change the narrative.
Indeed.
But when you rely so much on consensus,
this is it.
That is really what the issue is. So much on consensus. Well, the slowest coach chain is as strong as the weakest link.
Absolutely, as I said. And the discussion that it prompted in the office, I said he's kind of thrown down the gauntlet and grabbed the headlines with that statement. But how real, how practical are the suggestions that he's making? For the very reasons you've given, in that not everybody subscribes to it, can buy into it. He talks about the African Union. It's headquartered in Addis Ababa. That very country, Ethiopia, is always on the verge of another war with Eritrea because it keeps insisting that it will have access to the Red Sea. The only way it can have that is by going through Eritrea, and it's not going to happen. And Abiy Ahmed keeps saying it and keeps. So we're talking about, well, how do you solve that particular framework for peace? In West Africa, we have the Sahel region and its instability. We have Boko Haram in Nigeria and in India. So they're quite different things that, you have Al-Shabaab in Somalia. It's not a unified and single threat to security that we're facing. And you can't have a unified policy that will deal with all of those. It's an impossibility.
That's it. And the African Union has been a failure in this conflict resolution.
Yeah, quite.
It's massive. Yeah. So what have we seen? External actors taking the lead.
Yeah, quite.
All these peace summits, Dubai, wherever, that area, that's where they go. They've taken over this. They're the new Switzerland, I suppose.
Indeed.
All of these diplomatic negotiations are happening there. The African Union doesn't have any teeth.
This is it.
So this is the key. All these presidents, even when I listened to Ruto there, I said, oh, I wonder whether you are walking the talk. What are you doing within Kenya? Not long ago, the protests that we saw on our TVs leading to the student deaths and that sort of thing. What are you doing at home? So this is really the key. When we speak to the world, what ideas do we speak to? What values? When we rule, what values, as it were, do we apply? This is curious to my mind, a curious disconnect. As it were. This is really what the problem is. How can we reform? Well, we are too divided to agree.
Quite. I think that says it beautifully. Too divided to agree. And that takes us to story number 7. I know we don't have much time. Producer will come and yank me from my seat in a minute. But the next one, we go to South Africa, and the South African politician Julius Malema. He was up before the courts recently for an incident dating back to 2018. Yes, 2018. Have a look, have a listen.
For consideration, and I can show you I have done so, free of any interference, this judgment or sentence is the sentence of this court and this court alone. In respect of count 1, you are sentenced to a period of 5 years imprisonment. In respect of count 2, you are sentenced to a period of 2 years imprisonment. In respect of count 3, you are sentenced to 20,000 rand or to undergo 6 months imprisonment. In respect of count 4, you are sentenced to 20,000 rand or to undergo 6 months imprisonment. In respect of count 5, you are sentenced to pay a fine of 20,000 rand or to undergo 6 months imprisonment. In terms of Section 280, subsection 2 of Act 51 of 1977, the court orders that the sentence imposed in respect of counts 2, 3, 4, and 5 run concurrent with the sentence imposed in respect of count 1.
The most incompetent magistrate who read a judgment for 3 days. It is never done. She does so because we suspect she doesn't write her own judgments.
Malema unbowed, I think it's safe to say, by the conviction, which, to kind of sum it up, in 2018 they were celebrating Economic Freedom Fighters, their 5th birthday party, and he had a gun which he waved and fired in the air. He didn't fire it at anybody, but it is against the law to do so. They weren't blank bullets, they were live bullets, and that has led. So yes, in 2018, but then various people got ill as the trial was about to start, and then COVID-19 happened, it got postponed, and then eventually we landed to where we are. But Mr. Mboj, of course, he claims it's politically motivated.
And we all say that, don't they? It's bound to be that.
Go ahead.
Well, we sort of normally describe him as the firebrand and
yes,
all of these
I
things.
did in my report. Yes.
He came from the ANC.
Youth wing.
This is
yes.
youth wing.
Yeah.
So this is sort of the next stage.
Yeah, quite.
Post-apartheid, South Africa was going to be a very tricky, experiment.
We always knew that once
nation,
Mandela was off the stage, it was going to be
that sort of thing, because
yes.
Maybe the radical reforms expected. Who were you talking to the other day in our office who said that Mandela should have just confiscated the land and everything and given back to black people? Said no, it doesn't work like that. Perhaps that would have been more damaging to black people than anything else because of the consequences of that.
Indeed.
So it was always going to be difficult. Economic freedom fighters, this sort of thing. That has always been a difficult one. Economic parity, the question of distribution. So, but you need such voices.
Indeed.
In South Africa, the inequality, the economic inequality is extraordinary.
The fact that they've risen to become the 4th largest party in the parliament shows that they resonate with a certain number of people, because if you look at, there's no doubt about it that if they rejoined the ANC and Zuma's Umkhonto we Sizwe also, they will still be the largest party. So 2 breakaways have severely damaged the ANC, and you know, I watched the whole of this sentencing, by the way, because I wanted to do the story, and it was interesting. Because even in the argument there, I say this laughingly because, and you know, I hope they won't take this the wrong way, but in the same way that the state recently lost the Bojang case here, when I heard the state council trying to object to bail or an appeal, and then I heard Malema's was lawyer defense was so much better. And there was something that they said, they didn't say, which I thought they didn't say, but will almost likely say in the appeal. And it was this: as I was watching, before she pronounced her sentence, Toinette Olivier, the magistrate, said that, before I pronounce sentence, I want you to know that everybody has to be treated equally in the eyes of the law. Regardless of who you are, on your status and so on. And then she went on for half an hour to read the statement. But then just before she read the sentence, she said, one of the reasons this court has taken this decision is because you are a public figure, because you are somebody who people follow and respect and see as a role model. I thought, my God, you've just destroyed the case you made half an hour ago, saying everybody is equal before the law. You've now said that he's a special case. they will jump on that in the appeal. You know, and if they don't, then you should sack them. But honestly,
absolutely, this political, social, as it were, elements coming in there. I think it was what Oliver Wendell Holmes called the sort of inarticulate major premise.
Right.
We all have our angle. It's never strictly just legal reasoning, you know, devoid of, as it were, any ideological anchoring. We are all anchored somewhere, and they all seep through, as it were, in our thinking and our analysis and that sort of thing. Oh, absolutely. You know, the political, you cannot remove it from there. And yes, but still, Malema represents something. When he's gone, another one will come along.
Indeed.
It's an idea.
That's right.
You know, we've gained the political kingdom, as Kwame Nkrumah said.
Right.
Where are the economic gains?
Yeah, that's right. that's what we're after next. Thank you for that, Mr. Bush. But this one, the appeal, I'm sure will attract as much attention as the court case for which he got sentenced. Thank you for that. Story number 8. Here in the Gambia, we come back home. The Civil Service Union. They've just had the first orientation ceremony for the first cohort of folks who will be taking their courses at that university. Have a look and have a listen.
Development Institute, MDI, into the University of Civil Service underlines the government's ambition to professionalize the civil service and to better equip public officials to meet the country's development needs. It was a historic moment in Kanifing as the Civil Service University welcomed its first cohort of students during an official orientation ceremony. The event brought together students newly enrolled in programs including diplomacy and international relations and peace and conflict studies. The university's registrar, Adama Onjai, welcomed the new cohort.
Equipped with the knowledge, skills and values to navigate complex international systems and promote peace, stability, and development.
The institution, formerly the Management Development Institute, senior officials including the principal accountant Haruna Fatajo also addressed the gathering.
The tuition fees for the regular program is there of about 42,250 per annum.
2024, the National Assembly gave the thumbs up, saying, go ahead, transform MDI into Civil Service University, and, you know, and also Gambia College into the University of Education, etc., etc. So it's part of a kind of wider thing. But Professor Pierre Gomez at this event said, and I quote him, that it will equip civil servants with the ethical and technical foundation needed for transparent and accountable, the G word, governance. Will it do that?
Theoretically, it could, but how many different areas one considered? Theoretically, this could be the outcome, but in reality, our experiences have shown something entirely different. So absolutely, yes, fine, we've got a Civil Service University. So what next? You know what I mean? What would be the operational reality? We all know what the problems are, really. We must emphasize, and it's really about competence. Do your work competently, and the ethics of it, not receiving kickbacks. We know what the problems are. Can they address these problems?
Right,
well, we'll have to wait and see. Because there was a time when the Gambia had one of the most enviable civil services around this region. We didn't have a civil service university. So one understands this, but we know that there's a lot more we need to do to have the kind of civil servants that the country needs.
Thank you very much. And as I always say on this program, some stories demand more of our time than others, and that one doesn't demand rather as much of our time as other stories. Story number 8, that was, and then number 9, our penultimate story. Federation of Labour Unions of the Gambia has been launched. Some people call it FLUG, some people call it FLUG, whatever. Have a look, have a listen.
The establishment and legal registration of FLUG stands as a bold declaration that workers in the Gambia are ready to speak with one voice, act with one purpose, and define with unwavering commitment the rights, dignity, and welfare of all working people.
The newly launched Federation of Labour Unions of the Gambia brings together registered unions under a single platform to promote unity, democratic values and protect workers' rights. Omar Cisse was introduced as the interim president of the Federation.
We are here today to start to advocate together, work together, represent together, mention each and workers when anywhere you are, your voice will be heard.
Solidarity forever, solidarity forever.
The establishment of this federation is a direct affirmation of the constitutional right of every Gambian citizen to freedom of association, the right to organize, and the right to collective bargain for fair wages and decent working conditions.
I want to assure you our collaborations and the support.
Collaboration, support. Mr. Mboj, it's taken a while for us to get here. This is, you and I know, in many other countries, such federations are long established. And I was going to joke about butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers because it's got the National Farmers Union, it's got the National Bakers Union, Gambia Press Union, Dock and Maritime Workers, Tailors Union, informal sectors, and Gambia Teachers Union, Transport Union. They're all part of it. So quite a sort of a broad kind of group, and of course it's now meant to be this umbrella body for them.
Absolutely, but what would the effectiveness be?
That's what
When we look at unionism generally, during the independence struggle, they were very political.
Yeah, indeed.
It was a political arm. When we take our history here, well, the Gambia, I understand, are the first, and British West Africa, really, in Africa to register a union. Edward Francis Small.
Indeed.
But we see how political it was, that sort of thing.
That's
so post-independence, I think they've been sort of their status, as it were, has been plummeting,
really
dropping
has.
all over. Perhaps one major one I can think of right now was in Zambia against Kaunda Chiluba. He was a unionist, wasn't it?
Right.
So he used it as a platform to win. But more generally, they've been more subdued now. But again, when you look at our society, our economy, I don't know, 70, 80% all in the informal economy, in the informal sector. They're really never in there. So they're dominated mainly by public sector workers, teachers, healthcare workers, civil servants, stuff like that sort of thing.
Bakers,
How do you reinvent yourself so that you can tackle, as it were, modern issues?
And for me it seems rather odd that we're forming it now, because I can recall back in Sierra Leone, Shaka Stevens started his political career as a union leader. And in fact the only kind of overseas training he did was when the union sent him to Durham University to do a brief course.
It was a launching pad for a political career.
Yeah, sure.
It's not so anymore.
No.
So how do they make themselves relevant in the age wherein I think that is really what the challenge is.
This is it. And the whole thing about collective bargaining is going to be really interesting to see how this one grows. But thank you for that. And finally, I mentioned the African Union of Broadcasters being here. On the side of the kind of main event, there was one about artificial intelligence. Yes, the thing that's kind of dominating our lives these days. Have a look and have a listen, and this is our last story.
Training brings together media professionals from across the Gambia and experts from across Africa to examine how artificial intelligence is transforming media content production, newsroom operations, and audience engagement. Artificial intelligence is transforming journalism through faster news gathering, automated content creation, data-driven storytelling, and real-time audience analysis. It also raises concerns about ethics, credibility, and job security in the media sector. Already, some online channels, including here in the Gambia, have AI-generated anchors.
And because of technology, narratives are shaped in seconds. Falsehoods travel faster than facts, and increasingly artificial intelligence is becoming part of this ecosystem. Therefore, this training is timely. The question before us is not whether AI will shape the future of media. The real question is whether our journalists like you are adequately prepared and equipped to shape that future responsibly.
To maintain public trust.
Artificial intelligence has two ways. It can do the best for you. It can also turn out to be the worst, depending on how it is used. So this training is very timely to help broadcasters, journalists in general, understand how best to use artificial intelligence for the common good, instead of using it for the reverse.
For the common good. I'm smiling because sometimes these days when I pick up a newspaper, I can see articles that are obviously written by AI, and it's kind of depressing. And I have to say, even some of our colleagues here submit stuff that is probably AI very, very strongly, if they're honest, AI generated rather than, and I'm old school, as one of my colleagues called me today, in the sense that I know about the inevitability of AI coming, but it shouldn't replace you thinking for yourself.
Come on, research, data analysis, content generation, it helps you in all sorts of ways. We all know that. But when you read an essay generated by AI, you don't see the human sweat, as I called it the other day. Human thinking, it works in a certain way, as it were. You can tell when you read that. Nobody can deny the value of AI. Now it's part of the workflow in the West, isn't it? This is coming in increasingly, part of the media workflow, as it were. But we must all recognize the dangers. To what extent? These days, journalism is in trouble. Yes.
Exactly.
So job displacement, we might be displaced by this technology. Journalism is in trouble because nobody knows what really journalism means anymore. These days, you talk to some of these kids, they are media practitioners. I have no idea what is that, what does it mean? So now when you go online, people do not make a distinction between the journalist and just this media influencer, whatever they call them, that sort of thing. So this is it. It's just a jumbled up, mixed up, as it were, ecosystem. So people will tell you, oh, I don't trust media people, I don't trust journalists, I don't trust this, because we are all lumped together. It's just social media, they don't make any distinctions. So we are very, very, very much in trouble.
Big time, AI or not, we're in trouble.
AI or not.
And that brings us beautifully. Post-truth world that we live in.
Post-truth world? Who cares? Nobody trusts us.
I think the producer's about to cut off our microphone, so I better say thank you, Mr. Mboj, for your interjection. And of course, to you, the viewers and listeners, thank you for being with us until we come your way again next week. Goodbye.